The silence of a house during a blizzard is different. It presses against the glass like a physical weight. When you're home alone on Christmas Eve, that silence can feel like a warm blanket, or it can feel like hands closing around your throat. This happened 2 years ago. I was 24, living just outside of Chicago. My parents were in Florida, so I stayed behind to watch the house and our golden retriever, Buster. It was supposed to be a relaxing couple of days, just me, the dog, and a fridge full of leftovers. By 10 p.m. on Christmas Eve, the snow wasn't just falling, it was dumping. The weatherman had called it a historic event. Outside my window, there were no streetlights, no houses, just a swirling vortex of white. I turned off the lamps to watch the storm, leaving only the faint blue glow of the street lamps struggling at the end of the driveway. The first notification came at 11:15 p.m. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. Motion detected at front door. I didn't panic. In a storm like this, the sensors go haywire. Drifting snow or the wind rattling the door happens constantly. I tapped the notification. The video loaded, showing a grainy, gray view of the porch. The wind was whipping snow sideways in violent streaks. I watched for 30 seconds. Nothing. Stupid thing, I muttered. I went back to my movie. But 20 minutes later, it happened again. Motion detected at front door. This time, I felt a prick of unease. I checked the feed again. Nothing. Just the empty porch. But on the left side of the screen, the snow looked disturbed, like a clump had fallen off the roof, or like something had brushed against it. I told myself I was being paranoid. At 12:30 a.m., I headed to bed. Buster was asleep in the hallway. I double-checked the deadbolt, tugging the handle to be sure, and went upstairs. The wind was howling around the eaves now. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to distract myself from how big and empty the house felt. 1 a.m. passed. 2 a.m. passed. I was just drifting off when the phone on my nightstand buzzed again. The vibration sounded like a gunshot in the quiet room. It was 2:43 a.m. Motion detected at front door. This wasn't the wind. The wind doesn't trigger the sensor 3 times with hours of silence in between. I grabbed the phone, my heart hammering. The screen was blindingly bright. I opened the app, waited for the buffer, and then my blood turned to ice. The camera was in night vision mode, making everything look like a ghostly black and white movie. Standing right in the center of the frame was a figure. They were wearing a white hoodie, bright white, blending in with the snow. The hood was pulled up tight, obscuring their face. They were wearing gray sweatpants and heavy gloves. They weren't moving. They were just standing there, staring at the door. My breath caught. Who is this? Why aren't they ringing the bell? I watched as the figure slowly bent down. He was holding something. 2 large wrapped boxes. Christmas presents. The wrapping paper looked dark in the night vision, with shiny bows on top. He placed the gifts gently on the doormat, right in front of the threshold. He moved with a terrifying precision. No wasted movement, no hesitation. Is it a delivery? At 3 a.m.? In a blizzard? No. The figure stood back up, but he didn't turn around. He didn't walk back to a truck. The driveway was empty. Whoever this was, they had walked here through the snow. The man took a step back, moving to the right side of the frame near the railing, and then he stopped. He didn't leave. He just stood there, body angled toward the door, head bowed. He was waiting. Panic started to set in. I sat up, swinging my legs onto the cold floor. I was terrified to go downstairs. If the floor creaked, he would know I was awake. I looked back at the phone. The live feed was still running. What are you doing? The man in the white hoodie shifted. He reached out and touched the handle of the storm door. He didn't turn it. He just rested his gloved hand on the latch. That's when I noticed the gifts again. Now that he had stepped back, I had a clear view. When he had set them down, the camera picked up a heavy thud. It didn't sound like clothes. It sounded like metal or stone. I knew then that I was looking at a trap. He was betting on curiosity. He was betting that if someone saw gifts on their porch on Christmas, they would open the door to grab them before the snow ruined the cardboard. And he was standing right there, just out of sight, waiting for the deadbolt to click. I watched him for 3 minutes. He barely moved. He was patient, predatory. The steam from his breath puffed out in rhythmic clouds. My finger hovered over the microphone button, but if I spoke, I confirmed I was home alone. If I yelled, he would know exactly where I was. Then I remembered the other feature. My dad had installed the Ring floodlight cam. It had 2 high-intensity LED beams. I watched the screen. The man was still there, hand on the latch. I took a deep breath, my thumb shaking over the icon labeled "Lights On." I pressed it. The reaction on the screen was instant. The image flared white as the camera adjusted to color. Outside, I heard the click of the floodlights. The porch was instantly blasted with 2,000 lumens of harsh light. The man in the hoodie flinched violently. It was like hitting a cockroach with a flashlight. He recoiled, his hand flying up to shield his eyes. For a second, just one terrifying second, the camera caught him perfectly. This is the image that burns in my nightmares. He was wearing a white hoodie. His hand was up, covering his face, blocking the light. But I saw his mouth. He wasn't surprised. He was furious. His lips were pulled back in a snarl, teeth gritted. And in his other hand, the hand that wasn't shielding his eyes, I saw what he had been hiding. It wasn't a scanner. It was a screwdriver. A long, rusted, flathead screwdriver, the tip filed to a sharp point. My heart stopped. The gifts were just the bait. The screwdriver was for me. He stood there for a heartbeat, blinded, exposed. Then, instead of running, he lunged. He grabbed the storm door and ripped it open, slamming it against the railing. He threw his body weight against the heavy wooden front door, hammering on it with his shoulder. The sound shook the walls. Buster started barking wildly downstairs, a deep, aggressive roar. He threw himself against the door, matching the stranger's aggression. I scrambled out of bed, grabbed the aluminum baseball bat from my closet, and sprinted to the top of the stairs. "Get away!" I screamed. "I have a gun! I'm calling the police!" Downstairs, the pounding stopped. There was silence. I stood at the top of the stairs, gripping the bat. Buster was at the bottom, hackles raised, growling at the door. I waited for the sound of glass breaking. I waited for the kick that would splinter the frame. But it never came. I crept back to the bedroom and picked up my phone. The porch was empty. The storm door was hanging wide open, swinging violently in the blizzard wind. The gifts were still there, but the man in the white hoodie was gone. I retreated into my parents' bedroom, locked the door, and dialed 911. The operator told me response times were delayed. I sat there for 45 minutes, bat in one hand, phone in the other, watching the live feed of my empty porch. Every shadow looked like him. Every gust of wind sounded like footsteps. When the police finally arrived, seeing their lights cut through the snow was the greatest relief of my life. They checked the perimeter. He was gone. The footprints leading up to the porch were clear, coming from the woods behind the neighbor's property. The officer knocked and I let them in. The wind blew snow into the hallway. The first thing they did was inspect the boxes. "Stay back," the officer said. He nudged one box with his boot. It was heavy. He carefully cut the tape. Inside the first box was a cinder block. Just a dirty, gray brick used to give the box weight. He opened the second box. Inside, there was no cinder block. There was a roll of heavy-duty duct tape, a pack of large zip ties, and a folded piece of notebook paper. The officer picked up the paper and unfolded it. He read it, and his face went pale. He looked at his partner, then at me. It was a list. a handwritten list of addresses. My address was the third one down. The first two were crossed out with thick black ink. They never caught the guy. The footage was too blurry because of the motion and his hand covering his eyes. The police think he was looking for easy targets, houses that looked quiet, people too polite to leave a package in the snow. They think the first two addresses were houses where no one answered, or maybe where someone did answer. I don't spend Christmas alone anymore, and I don't care who is at the door. If I didn't order it, I don't open it. But sometimes, when it snows late at night, I check the cameras. And every time the wind blows the snow into a certain shape, I see that white hoodie again, standing in the dark, holding his bait, waiting for the light to turn on. If you have never been inside a massive shopping mall after the doors lock, you don't know what true silence sounds like. It isn't just quiet. It is a heavy, physical presence. It's the low-frequency hum of air conditioning, the creaking of steel beams, and the ghostly echo of pop music playing for an audience that isn't there. I worked at the Grandview Mall in Ohio back in 2019. It was a dying mall, but during the holidays, it still managed to pull in crowds. I worked at a women's clothing boutique on the second floor. It was Christmas Eve. The mall officially closed at 6 p.m. The chaos of the last hour was insanity. Desperate husbands looking for jewelry, and tired parents dragging screaming toddlers toward the exits. But by 6:30 p.m., the security guards had swept the corridors, the grates had rattled down, and the last customer was ushered out into the snow. My manager, Sarah, asked if anyone wanted to stay behind for an extra 4 hours. We had to do a hard reset of the floor, fold every shirt and prep for the sale on the 26th. She offered triple time pay. I was 22, broke, and didn't have any family nearby, so I said yes. Sarah left at 7 p.m. It was just me and the inventory. For the first 2 hours, it was fine. I put in my earbuds, blasted a podcast, and mindlessly folded sweaters. The gate was locked from the inside, so I felt secure in my bubble of light. Around 9 p.m., I took my earbuds out to grab water. That's when the atmosphere really hit me. The lights had been dimmed to night mode. Banks of overhead fluorescents turned off, leaving long stretches of shadow. The only real light came from the skylights and the Christmas decorations. The giant tree in the center court was still lit. The garlands wrapped around the railings twinkled in the gloom. Over the PA system, a slow, distorted version of Silent Night was playing, echoing off the tile floors like it was coming from underwater. I was standing at the cash wrap when I heard it. Thump. It was a heavy, dull sound. It didn't sound like something falling. It sounded like something hitting the floor. Hard. I froze. The sound had come from somewhere close, maybe the corridor right outside my gate. "Hello?" I called out. "Miller? Is that you?" Miller was the night security guard, an older guy, totally harmless. No answer. Just the hum of the vending machines. I peered through the mesh grate. The hallway was empty. The shadows stretched out long and distorted across the polished tile. I scanned for shattered glass or a fallen sign. Nothing. Maybe it was snow falling off the roof, I told myself. I went back to the folding table and put my earbuds back in, keeping the volume low. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the air in the mall had changed. It felt charged, watchful. By 10:15 p.m. I was done. I clocked out, grabbed my coat, and keyed in the alarm code. I rolled up the gate just enough to slide under, then locked it behind me. Now came the worst part, the walk to the exit. I had to walk past the entire north wing to get to the main entrance where Miller's station was. My sneakers squeaked on the floor. Squeak, squeak. The sound echoed so loudly it felt like a beacon. I kept my head down, walking fast, clutching my keys between my fingers. As I passed the Kids World clothing store, I saw movement. It was just a flicker, a shadow detaching itself from the darkness. I stopped dead. About 50 feet ahead, on the opposite side, I saw a figure. It was brief, but I saw someone dart from the main hallway into the open entrance of a sporting goods store. The gate to that store wasn't down. It was wide open. "Miller!" I yelled. My heart hammered. "Miller, stop playing around!" Silence. I waited for the old guard to pop his head out, but no one came. The sporting goods store was pitch black inside. It looked like a gaping mouth. I should have run, but part of my brain was convinced it had to be Miller. I took a few steps toward the store. "Miller, seriously, you scared me." I reached the entrance. The darkness inside was thick. I used my phone flashlight to cut through the gloom. The beam swept over racks of winter coats and walls of basketballs. "Is anyone in here?" I swung the light to the left, toward the front display window. And that's when I gasped. The display area had been destroyed. The mannequins, athletic ones usually posed jogging, had been moved. They weren't just knocked over, they had been dragged. They were clustered together in a circle near the checkout counter, like a barricade. It looked frantic, disorganized. And in the center of the circle of plastic bodies, a pile of winter coats had been pulled off the racks and thrown onto the floor. This wasn't Miller. A cold wave of realization washed over me. The thump I heard earlier. That was someone dropping from the ceiling tiles or forcing a door. Someone was in here, and they were hiding behind that pile of coats. I turned and bolted. I didn't care about the noise anymore. I sprinted down the concourse, my boots slapping against the tile. The silent night music seemed to get louder, mocking me. I burst into the main atrium. I could see the glass doors of the north entrance ahead. "Miller!" I screamed. "Help!" Miller was sitting at the desk. He jumped up, grabbing his radio. "Alex? What happened?" I skidded to a halt. "There's someone in there," I gasped. "In the sporting goods store. I saw him run in. He moved the mannequins. He's hiding." Miller went pale. He keyed his radio. "Dispatch, I have a report of an intruder in the north wing, requesting police assistance immediately." He looked at me. "Stay here." We stood by the glass doors for 10 agonizing minutes. I watched the hallway, convinced I was going to see a maniac come running out. Finally, blue and red lights washed over the snow outside. 2 police cruisers skidded to a halt. 4 officers came through the doors. "Where?" the lead officer asked. "Sporting goods, north wing," Miller said. The police moved in formation, lights mounted on their weapons cutting through the dark. Miller and I stayed back. We watched their lights disappear into the store. We heard them shouting commands. "Police, show your hands!" There was a scuffle, the sound of racks being shoved aside. My stomach twisted. I braced myself for a gunshot. Then, the shouting stopped. The radio on Miller's belt crackled. "Dispatch, we have 1 subject in custody. Situation is contained. No ambulance needed." A few minutes later, the officers walked out of the store. They weren't running. They were walking a man out between them. He wasn't a monster. He wasn't wearing a mask. He was old, maybe 60s, but he looked 80. His face was weathered, covered in a patchy white beard. He was wearing 3 different flannels layered over each other, and his pants were held up with rope. He was shivering violently. He looked terrified. He wasn't looking at the cops. He was looking at the floor, over and over. "I didn't steal nothing. Just cold. It's just so cold." The lead officer stopped near Miller. He looked tired. "He broke the lock on the back service door," the officer said. "He wasn't trying to loot. He pulled those coats down to make a bed. He moved the mannequins around him to block the draft from the door." I looked at the old man. He was weeping softly. He looked so small surrounded by the officers. The thump I heard. It wasn't a threat. It was him stumbling in the dark, maybe falling as he tried to find a warm place. The running I saw, it wasn't a killer stalking me. It was a terrified man trying to hide when he heard my footsteps squeaking down the hall. He wasn't a nightmare. He was just a human being who didn't want to freeze to death on Christmas Eve. Miller signed the report, and the police walked the man out into the blizzard. I watched the cruiser lights fade into the whiteout. I drove home in silence. When I got to my apartment, I turned up the heat until it was stifling. I sat on my couch, wrapped in a blanket, looking at my Christmas tree. But I couldn't get the image out of my head. I kept seeing the sporting goods store. I kept seeing those plastic mannequins, dressed in expensive gear, standing guard in a circle. And in the middle of them, a pile of stolen coats, shaped like a nest, empty and cold. It's the scariest Christmas story I have, but not for the reason people think. I wasn't afraid of a ghost or a killer. I was afraid because for a split second, in that dark mall, I realized how thin the line is between the world I live in, of folding sweaters and triple-time pay, and the world outside in the snow. And that sometimes, the things hiding in the dark aren't monsters. They're just people the world forgot. The battery icon on my phone was red, a thin sliver of life pulsing at 14%. That little red line was the only thing I was staring at as I stood shivering on the sidewalk outside the Italian bistro. It was December 23rd. My company had rented out the back room for our holiday party. By 11:30 p.m., the fun was winding down. I said my goodbyes and stepped out into the biting Boston wind. The cold was shocking. I opened the rideshare app. It was surging, $65 for a 4-mile ride. I groaned, staring at the screen, but the wind was cutting right through my jeans. I bit the bullet and hit confirm. The app pinged. Driver, David. Car, silver Toyota Camry. Arriving in 3 minutes. A silver sedan pulled up a moment later. It looked beaten up, salt-stained, and dirty. The window rolled down 2 inches. A blast of dry, overheating air hit my face. The driver was a silhouette in a thick beanie. "Ride for Elena?" he said. I nodded. "Yeah. David?" He nodded once. The locks clicked open. I slid into the back. The heat inside was stifling, smelling intensely of black ice air freshener mixed with stale cigarettes. I instantly regretted wearing my heavy wool coat. "How's your night?" I asked, buckling up. "Long," he said. He put the car in drive and pulled away. I watched the restaurant disappear. I checked my phone. 12% battery. The app showed our route, a straight shot down Main, then the highway. I leaned my head against the window, watching the city lights blur. The heat was making me drowsy. The rhythm of the tires was hypnotic. I closed my eyes. I don't know how long I dozed off, maybe 5 minutes? I woke up because the car lurched. We had hit a pothole. I blinked, shaking the grogginess. I looked out the window. We weren't on Main Street. We were passing under a concrete overpass. The streetlights here were yellow and sparse. Industrial warehouses lined the road. I knew the way home. This wasn't it. I pulled my phone out. 9% battery. I opened the rideshare app. Ride canceled. Your driver, David, has canceled the trip. I stared at the words. Canceled? If he canceled, the GPS tracking stopped. The safety toolkit stopped. To the app, I wasn't in a car anymore. But we were doing 50 miles per hour down a dark service road. A cold spike of adrenaline shot through my chest. "Hey," I said. "My app says you canceled the ride." The driver didn't answer. He kept his eyes on the road. "David?" I said louder. "Why did the app cancel?" He reached out and turned up the radio. Classic rock drowned out the engine. "Sir," I said, "you took a wrong turn. You need to turn around." He looked in the rearview mirror. For the first time, I saw his eyes. Dark, hooded, flat. He made eye contact in the reflection. He didn't blink. "Shortcut," he said. "This isn't a shortcut," I said. "I live in Somerville. You need to stop the car." "Traffic," he said. "Bad accident on the highway." I checked my phone. Google Maps showed green lines. No traffic. He was lying. Panic started to rise. I grabbed the door handle and pulled. Nothing. It moved loosely. The child locks were on. I tried the other door. Same thing. I was trapped in the back seat of a Toyota Camry, speeding through an industrial wasteland with a man who had severed our connection to the outside world. The claustrophobia hit me like a physical blow. The air felt too thick to breathe. I felt like I was in a coffin. "Let me out," I said, my voice shaking. "Stop the car. I'm going to be sick." He ignored me. He began to hum along with the radio. I tried the window switch. Locked. "I said stop the car!" I screamed. I unbuckled and lunged forward, grabbing his seat. "Let me out!" He slammed on the brakes. The car skidded on the ice, fishtailing before coming to a violent halt. I was thrown forward. We were in a dead end surrounded by shipping containers. No streetlights, just the headlights cutting through the darkness. He put the car in park. The doors clicked. He turned around. In the dashboard glow, I saw him clearly. He wasn't the man in the app photo. This man was older, with a scar through his eyebrow. He was smiling. It wasn't a nice smile. "You talk too much, Elena," he said softly. He reached for his seatbelt buckle. I knew if he got out and opened my door, I was never going home. I scrambled backward. My fingers closed around my phone. 4% battery. He opened his door. The interior light flickered on. He stepped out, boots crunching on gravel. I watched him walk around the back of the car. He moved slowly. He knew I couldn't get out. He reached my door. I saw the handle lift. I braced myself to kick him, but the door didn't open. He frowned. He pulled again. Click. He had forgotten to unlock the master switch. When he put the car in park, the front doors unlocked, but the back doors were still engaged. He cursed. He turned around to walk back to the driver's side to hit the unlock button. This was it. I had 6 seconds. I scrambled over the center console. My heavy coat snagged on the gear shift. I kicked wildly, pushing forward. My boot hit the radio, cranking the volume. I clawed my way into the driver's seat just as he reached the open door. He saw me. His eyes went wide. He lunged. His hand grabbed my coat. He yanked hard. "Get back here!" I twisted my body, slipping out of one sleeve. He pulled backward, pinning me for a second. I screamed, thrashing. I brought my knee up and slammed it into the horn. Honk! The noise startled him. His grip loosened. I shed the coat completely, leaving it in his hands. I tumbled out of the driver's side door onto the icy pavement. He threw the coat down and lunged again. He blocked the path back to the main road. I turned and ran the other way, toward the shipping containers. "You can't run anywhere," he yelled, laughing. I sprinted into the darkness. I ducked between 2 rusted containers and pressed my back against the steel. I pulled out my phone. 2% battery. I opened the app and hit the emergency assistance shield. I hit share location with police. The screen flashed. Location sent. Then the phone died. I was alone in the dark, unarmed, freezing. "Elena," his voice echoed. "I have the heater on. It's warm in the car." He was getting closer, checking the gaps. I looked down. At my feet was a piece of rusted rebar, a construction cutoff, heavy and jagged. I picked it up. I waited. A shadow fell across the snow. He stepped around the corner. "There you are." I swung the rebar with everything I had. I aimed for his knee. Crack! He screamed, a sound more animal than human. "Ah!" He collapsed into the snow. I didn't stick around. I ran. I ran back to the car, grabbed my coat with my keys, and ran down the service road toward the yellow streetlights. I ran until I flagged down a semi-truck on the main road. The police found the car an hour later. The man was gone. He had limped away into the woods, but they found the car. It didn't belong to a David. It had been reported stolen 3 days ago. The driver account had been created using a stolen identity. When they pulled up the backseat cushions, they found things: zip ties, duct tape, and a collection of driver's licenses, 4 of them, all belonging to women who had gone missing in the city over the last 6 months. People tell me I'm lucky. They tell me I did everything right to survive. But I know that's not true. The truth is, I made the mistake before I even got in the car. I was cold, I was tired, and I let my guard down. When he rolled down the window and said, "Ride for Elena?" I just nodded and got in. I never checked the license plate. I never asked him to say his name first. I assumed that just because he knew who I was, he was safe. And that assumption almost cost me my life.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe for more amazing content. Thanks for watching.